Welcome to Life by Design, episode 373. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today with my colleague, Dr. Crayshow Jug.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to see you. We had a great visit last week, Crayshow.
Yeah, that was nice. And my kids were crazy as always, but yeah, how it goes.
That's just to be expected all around. Plus, we showed up at 7 or 7:30. So by the time that time of day comes around, I mean, you're taking your chances.
That's true. This is true.
We are creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're talking about fish oil in major depressive disorders. So this is something we've talked about in the past, Crayshow, and I'm going to spoil it for our listeners and tell you that the evidence or the report coming from this study, this review of literature by a group of, I believe it was psychiatrists, who put together an organization to kind of review what the thought process was on polyunsaturated fatty acids when applied to someone who has a major depressive disorder. Here's the result. It was good. But there's more to it than that. So we want to talk about this. And I know a lot of times if we talk about depression, we've talked about the whole, push towards identifying mental health problems and talking more about. And I think all that stuff is amazing. It's wonderful. It's great to open the lines of communication for people to be comfortable communicating what they're feeling, their challenges. But there's also a physical side to this. And there's a physical side to dysfunction in the brain. And so when you think about the body as, a mechanical system in that sense, if you break the mechanics, then the output coming through the software is going to have a problem. And so this is where we can approach this from this perspective. So we're not suggesting anybody who has a major depressive disorder doesn't seek out counseling, go through therapy. In fact, you don't even need a major depressive disorder to seek out counseling and go through therapy as far as I'm concerned. But I think you do still have to be addressing the physical side of things, because when the physical side of your body declines, it has a direct effect on all functions, and in this case, especially mental function.
Yeah, so it's just funny. I totally agree. That's a great statement. But I got thinking, it's funny, poor application of philosophy when it comes down to it, right? Because for generations, and chiropractic and chiropractors are guilty of this as well. We've been taught that there's this division between your mind and your brain, right? That somehow the mind exists somehow out there. Your consciousness is devoid of a body, right? And in chiropractic, it's called, the educated mind and the innate mind. But you're right. Your mind exists in your brain, and you can't have a mind without the brain. So to ignore, to work on your mind and to work on your processes while ignoring that there's a physicality to this that involves mechanical parts and things from nature like nutrients, movement, function, is just a complete disaster. And the evidence completely supports that. That's not even a shadow of a doubt at this point anymore.
Well, I think a great way for people to think is to, think about what we know well. And that's our computer systems and all the technology that we use every day. We're recording this on, you've got hardware and you've got software. And so, there's hardware for your body. And specifically in this case, we're talking about the brain, and that hardware has requirements. So just like I'm using an iMac here, there's certain requirements for this to function. If something breaks, then it's not going to generate what I want on my screen. No matter what I type in on the keyboard, it's not going to receive the input. It's not going to generate the output. And the same is true for our bodies. And specifically with the brain, we're talking today about polyunsaturated fats. So these would be fats like fish oil, and there's some other ones that fall into these categories. But the reason they're important, because the body has a requirement for them. And so we have to add them in. And they play a role in cellular function. They play part of the cellular membrane, many of the other inner workings, and specifically in neurological function. Now, in the past, I think there's been discussions, and definitely I know for some healthcare providers, physicians, and others have said, there's no research to support taking a fish oil supplement. It's just a waste of money, all that type of stuff. And of course, there's then the other side effects that they're talking about with blood thinning. And, if you're in surgery, I always think it's funny when patients say they have to go for surgery and they're told to stop taking their fish oil and vitamin D. And of course, I always ask them this question.
I love this. I love this. By the way. I think about you every time, but it's awesome.
I would say, well, that's interesting. I said, did your physician or your healthcare provider also advise you to not go in the sun and not eat fish? And they look at me, with kind of a glazed over look, and they go, no, actually they didn't. I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm just thinking, since you're not allowed to take vitamin D and you can't take fish oil, then I'm guessing you should avoid eating fish and staying out of the sun. Yeah. So sometimes logic doesn't always come in. And there's just a side note, there is a lot of just protocol type things that fall into different procedures. And many of them are outdated and probably, weren't even built on some type of solid foundation in the first place. But nonetheless, polyunsaturated omega-3 fats are an essential fat, meaning we have to add them into our body. So it just makes sense that if there's a deficiency, and this study is not necessarily looking at whether there was deficiencies, which I think is another important point. This is simply looking at, a group of studies, a review of literature from a research organization saying, okay, what does it look like here? We're not happy with how major depressive disorders are being treated. Is there something that we can do? And we're going to look here at these polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so basically, when you look across the research and you look at the combination of epidemiological studies, case control studies, RCTs, essentially adding fish oil, or more specifically EPA and DHA fats, shows that there's a positive benefit to people who have major depressive disorder. So, at the end of the day, what it's saying is that, you add these fats in and it's good for your brain.
Yeah. So the limitations that we need to talk about that are important is they didn't follow these people for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's between 8 to 14 weeks. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's important is the dosage, right? This is a conversation that I have with people in the practice all the time. I think the issue, Jamie, you're talking about, the warnings around fish oil. And, for us, we're not recommending supplementation to treat a condition. We're Correct. Recommending supplementation like it's a food. So we're trying to make sure that your body has enough, raw materials to make the repairs and to create the function that it needs. And when you're treating these things like they're another form of therapy, then then the same protocols that apply to drugs and other pharmaceuticals apply to the same thing, versus when you're just taking it because you should be getting these things into your body, it changes the way that you look at this.
Well, yes, it opens up, the question that we posed earlier, which is, what's the best way to approach this? Is it from a requirement and strategy standpoint? Is it from a need? What does my body need versus a treatment standpoint, which is, I have this diagnosis, I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff at it. And you've seen this with super high dose vitamin C and other types of nutrients as well. And as you mentioned, the same type of thinking applies. If I have this condition, I'm going to throw a bunch of this at it. More must be better. I think is often the thought process. Oh, water is good for you. More must be better. Yeah, until you drown. And then water's not so good for you anymore. And so we've got to think of it in terms of a requirement and strategy standpoint. So, what's the requirement? How much omega-3 fats, and specifically the polyunsaturated fats, do we need to function cellularly on a regular basis? Can we get it from food? Right? I think that's a good question. Can we get it from food in a way that doesn't add to toxicity? So, of course, when you talk about fish, you then bring into the conversation at least the bioaccumulation of mercury or other types of potential toxins. So for us, we still eat fish, and I think eating fresh fish is great if you can get access to that. And absolutely, there's no restriction for us on consuming healthy sources of fish, just like there isn't on healthy sources of other animal products. I think they are still the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, with proteins and fats and fat-soluble vitamins, other great things in them.
There's data to support that, by the way. That's not even your opinion. There's facts on that.
No. That's a whole other conversation that we have on a regular basis here on the podcast. But the point here is, if you can get it from food, that's great. If you can't, then you need to top up, is a great way to think about it. I like the idea of topping up, not to downplay the value of these things, but it gives people a good visual, right? If I'm deficient in, say, vitamin D, and I'm not getting adequate amounts in the sun simply because I'm wearing clothes, or I don't go out during the day of those hours, or I wear sunscreen, or it's Canada in the winter, then for those reasons, I need to top up. And so, we've got our list of essentials, omega-3 fats being one of them, vitamin D, vitamin K2, magnesium as a mineral supplement, and then probiotics in some cases. So, these are I really approach from a top-up perspective. So I think 2 grams of EPA and DHA fats is really no big deal. What we see here is that the research on the blood thinning effects are not happening, even at much, much higher levels. So double the levels, there's still no associated risk of major bleeding. So I think the whole point here is that whether you have major depressive disorder or not, I think you need to approach your body from a what does it need in order to work better standpoint. And there's the whole physicality of that. So whether it be, addressing the neurological health through food, through chiropractic corrective care, through exercise, giving your body the raw materials. And then, yes, you still have to address the mind. And, we cover this on Think by Design over and over again, but counseling, psychological help, support, family. I think there's a lot of things that have to play a role in it too, Cratio.
I would agree with all that. I would also add, because one thing, that's been tossed around by many people, physicians included, is that there's no data to support the benefits of fish oil. Mm-hmm. That's just bad advice. That's incorrect. And that's bad advice. And again, I'm always, you need to advocate for your own health and check the facts for yourself and learn how to check the facts when it comes to this, because unfortunately you can get a lot of bad advice. And there's people out there that could be helped just by adding something as simple into their life as, a fish oil supplement.
Yeah, absolutely true. So guys, go to the show notes. You can check out the study itself, and you can download a free Eat by Design ebook with all of our information and details about what we think you should be eating in order to maximize your health and get the best results. That's at lifebydesign.com/podcast. And as always, thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.